is there an element of hyperbole in this talk? Yes, huge amounts of hyperbole. Obviously, social media is massively powerful to the business enterprise, but specifically right now, it's framed in terms of marketing, PR, and customer service. And what I'm here to suggest today is that, well, sort of, I don't know if it's saying it, but basically business is more than those three areas. And it's time for the entrepreneurs in the real-time data space to recognize that. So I suggest we make a leap from marketing to business intelligence. And I've got a couple of, and the reason that I say this is basically that when I ask for the temperature of in this room, I'm not asking for the speed and velocity of every molecule in this room. I want a number. Completeness is essentially the lowest rung in the spectrum of knowledge. You start with data, you extract some information about it, over time you determine correlation. If you're really lucky, you get some causation, and finally, you just know something implicitly. When you get data, there's a hell of a lot of work to actually do something useful with it. So as an example, a number of our customers fall in the market research space. We've got a number of guys, and I love all of the sort of the newer market research companies, but they are absolutely obsessed with completeness of data. So we get a lot of customer calls that say something like, we just saw a tweet on Twitter that had this keyword that we're tracking and it didn't show up. And we're really nervous that, that Pampers isn't going to find out that some kid crapped his pants while wearing Pampers. What the old school market research companies go, and this is a service that goes back over 100 years, right? Burrell's Loose, 1888 these guys started their company. So they've got a lot of knowledge and learning behind them. What they recognize is they actually get paid to provide less information. The bulk of their revenue comes from analyst work. And the reason for this, right, is imagine you're sitting in front of your CEO and your CEO says, so, what do you think? What's the final disposition on releasing this widget? And you say, well, we put a survey out on the web and we got 10,000 responses. Let me go through them with you one by one. It's about action, not analysis. So first of all, sort of the classic example of this, consider the Pop-Tart. Some of you may be familiar, maybe many of you, most of you are familiar with this, but there was a great article back in 2004 in the New York Times about Walmart's massive data repository, right? This is all sort of 2005 data, but back then they had 460 terabytes of information about everything their customers have bought. And that's 100 million plus customers a week going through the doors and buying something. And so in 2005, big spate of hurricanes going on the East Coast, wrecked my parents' house, amongst other things. And so they did a bunch of research. They crunched the numbers to determine what they needed to stock more, right? Because Walmart's very much the sort of just-in-time prototype. And what they found is that in advance of a hurricane, they sell 7 times as many Pop-Tarts as normal. And the really funny thing is, you know what the #1 purchased item at Walmart is in front of a hurricane?
Beer.
Beer, that's right.
Well, of course.
So they didn't go through, right? They didn't look person by person. They didn't send something out and say, hey, everybody, what would you like to buy? They had a lot of data. They distilled that data down into some very actionable things. And now the cool thing is they tie themselves, right, to the very publicly available information from the National Weather Centers. And every time there's a hurricane going to the East Coast, they load up the 18-wheeler with beer and Pop-Tarts, and they sell the hell out of it. Something a little bit more webby. A Techstars startup that I'm a big fan of, Next Big Sound, has this really cool service that goes out and grabs listen data, follow data, like data for about 500,000 bands across Facebook and MySpace and IME and the like. And again, it's not the sort of qualitative, what are people saying about these bands? It's looking at trends and being able to extrapolate what caused things, because you can associate an event in the real world with a change in the trend. The really badass thing about this isn't just the record label saying, hey, here's a spike in some band, we should go sign them. Imagine doing this over several years for hundreds of thousands of bands, and being able to say, all right, if you're a hip hop act, don't bother don't bother spending time trying to get on Jimmy Kimmel, because it doesn't matter. If you're hip hop, obviously you want to be on Night at the Apollo, but also surprisingly, I don't know, Late Show with whoever, turns out to be the right thing. This again is action. One last example, and this is very much in the sort of social space. Something that we found with Gnip is a lot of our customers, again, a lot of those social media companies are sort of obsessed with making sure that they get all the data from YouTube, which is a fool's errand. And when you dig, when we've dug down with them, their primary concern is that they don't care about the baby and Pampers. They care about being aware of a viral video after their customer is aware of that video.